Smoke.
Welcome back. Our good friend Ryan Andrade from RotoWire.com. And Ryan, when you heard the news last, I guess it was Wednesday or Thursday, that Dan Hurley was going to go and interview at the Lakers, did you think he was gone?
Honestly, it took me a while to sort of process it because it seemed like it kind of just came out of nowhere. I'm not super, super deep into the NBA, but last I heard was JJ Redick was their guy. And then the next week, they're wanting to talk to Dan Hurley about it. And I mean, listen, it made a lot of sense for them to at least try, with how far that he has brought this UConn team in his 6 years that he's been there. The types of actions that he runs on offense, just his creative mind and intensity, made a lot of sense. But it definitely caught me off guard a little bit. And after processing a little bit, I just never really saw him leaving. I think I thought about it this way. I thought about it, if it's January 20th. And he's out here trying to coach LeBron and Anthony Davis, and they're not seeing eye to eye like that. That's one of those jobs that obviously there's a lot of pressure as a UConn coach, but that's one of those jobs that like you almost feel like a little bit powerless because LeBron and some of those veterans are going to do whatever they really want to do, and sometimes you're just there. You're just a scapegoat. I mean, that's kind of what Darvin Ham was, the last couple of years that he was there. So I thought it would have been a really big challenge. And, maybe he does make the trip to the NBA, a few years down the line. But, the opportunity to come back and try to go for a three-peat is, that was just too good to pass up, I think.
Ryan, there's been a lot of talk, especially in this era that we're in now, about the trials and tribulations of college coaching and just college athletics in general. A lot of talk about, coaches maybe getting tired of having to deal with NIL and recruiting and all these things, and that the pro job is actually less stressful and more relaxing at this point in time. But that wasn't what Dan Hurley ultimately thought, or not what he wanted to pursue. How big of a win do you just think this is in some ways for college sports and college athletics to see a guy remain in a sport despite all the chaos and craziness that is being reported about it at the moment?
Yeah, I think honestly it is. I think you're right. I think it is harder being a college coach in this day and age with recruiting, whether that's high school recruiting, whether that's recruiting in the transfer portal, whether that's recruiting amongst your own players and trying to convince them to come back. It's a year-round job. There's no time to rest really. And maybe you can get away with that a little bit. The front office is sort of handling more of the player acquisitions and whatever you want to call it for the NBA or the NFL. But yeah, I think it's definitely a huge one for college basketball to have, a personality and, a guy like Dan Hurley come back, for, less money. I think it's especially big when you consider some of the names that have left college basketball in the last, 5-6 years. Coach K, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, that. To lose another guy like that, college coaches are, the personalities with there being so much turnover with, freshmen leaving, transfer portal, teams don't look the same every year, but, the one thing that fans can, come back and look at is, the coaches are the same. And to have lost another guy like that would have really hurt, I think. But it's definitely a big win for, UConn, the Big East, and college basketball as a whole.
For college basketball as a whole, I mean, this is shaping up, and I know that the transfer portal is a gigantic headache, but with UConn, coming back and Dan Hurley being there to go for the three-peat, you've seen what Kansas and Kansas State and Baylor and Houston and Arizona have all done in the transfer portal in the Big 12 to make that league stronger. You've got shakeups across the SEC, especially massive ones with John Calipari going to Arkansas and Mark Pope taking his place at Kentucky. This might be the biggest buildup we've seen for a season in quite a while.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, there's just, there's so many teams out there really. And this is the last COVID year, for college basketball as well. And, college football, obviously. So, I thought, it was always kind of weird, just having to figure out which guy has that extra COVID year and stuff when you're putting together, projections and stuff for the upcoming season. But, it's a good thing because, college is keeping a lot more of their stars, in the game now with NIL and, transfer options, and especially in college basketball with the ability to, test the NBA draft process. A lot of guys just do that. And I think there was like 80, 90 guys that, recently withdrew from that just to get some feedback heading into this season. So yeah, there's a lot of teams right there. Kansas, Alabama, I think are sort of the two teams neck and neck for that top spot. And then, you got as many as, 5 Big 12 teams that are in that, top 10 mix. I think, UConn is right there too with some of the guys they brought in, some of the guys they brought back. So yeah, we are definitely set up for a fun year.
What do you think this means recruiting wise for Dan Hurley, that he can now stand across and tell people you're better to me than LeBron James. I would rather be here than coaching the best basketball player of a generation.
Yeah, not only that, he turned down the opportunity to be the highest paid coach in college basketball at Kentucky. So, you got two sides that you can sort of stand on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, definitely. I think, maybe there were some questions a few years ago about, is UConn, one of the blue bloods, that kind of came, relatively speaking, in the history of the sport, they kind of came on later, but 6 titles in the last 25 years, I think it is just insane to think about with, how much parity there is in basketball these days. So, yeah, that's just, that's definitely, that UConn head coaching job is definitely right up there with, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, Duke. It's got to be somewhere in that class, UCLA, so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I'm not necessarily sure that, his classes over the last, couple years, it hasn't quite been at, the top tier, like some of these other teams, but, with the commitment he's made and for guys to know that he's going to be there long-term, definitely has to give them confidence. And especially when you see them, the way they play out on the court and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll be fun to watch this year.
I would think that, he said he's interested in the NBA sometime in his future. It's not something he made a secret about. It wasn't something he made a secret about with his team when he went there to interview. He told them straight up and down, I'm going to go talk to the Lakers and see what they have to say. I would say, though, the more fit for his coaching style and personality would be a young team on the rise, not the Lakers desperately trying to get one last title before their veterans all retire.
Yeah. No, that was my same thinking too. He's only 51. He's got, if he wants to make that leap to the NBA, I think, there's a path where, he could do that eventually. And I think, quite honestly, there'd be, a better fit. I don't necessarily think LA doesn't really scream Dan Hurley to me, to be honest. So, definitely that I think would be interesting. I think if he could get a team that's, young, that he can develop, that he has, not necessarily such a short leash, like I think he would with, the Lakers, and him to expect to contend for a title right away. I don't think that's necessarily the best option for any, sort of college coach to make that type of leap. We've seen some in recent years that have had, not, the success rate from, college coaches going to the NBA hasn't been all that great over the last 20 years, I would say. So, I mean, maybe one day, I've heard that, obviously he was projected to be, I think, like top 5 or 6 in terms of, money per year. I think it was 6 years, 70 million, which I mean, that sounds like a NFL safety or a linebacker or something like that. That just getting floated out there like that. But yeah, I mean, listen, that might be something that he wants to do down the road. But hey, if he stays in stores and he's winning 2 of the next 4, 5 years, winning titles, it'd be hard to leave for me too. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
What team do you think has done the best rebuilding their roster? And it's still not over. Coleman Hawkins could I mean, he's gonna change the atmosphere on that as well. Wherever he decides to go, there's still a couple. But which team do you think, now that the draft process is over, has really set themselves up well to surprise and make a jump?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to not say like a team like Arkansas or somebody like that. That's kind of an easy one just because basically they took, the roster, a lot of the players from Kentucky and the recruiting class over there. So it's hard to not say someone like that. I think, obviously I'm a Kansas guy, so they had a lot of depth issues last season, and I think, bringing over a guy like AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin from Alabama, which still shocks me that he decided to leave the Tide after making a Final Four appearance. But, he's there. They got some good bench pieces. There's a lot of team. Baylor is another one that I think did a really, really good job. Bringing a experienced point guard like Jeremy Roach over. They got another good freshman class coming in, and there's a lot of depth on that team as well. So I think I'm looking at a lot of teams in the Big 12 to really challenge for that, and they've been sort of a lot of people have gotten on the Big 12, I would say, over the last decade, because I think over that period of time, if you just go by like a site like KenPom or something, clearly they are the best, strongest conference, but a lot of people like to look at the results of, a single elimination tournament, and sometimes, they're getting 1 or 2 teams to the Elite 8 or something like that when people are expecting them to get like half of them. And that's not always just realistic. So I think, this year, given the teams that are there, the guys that came back, I would not be surprised at all to see, maybe a couple Big 12 teams make the Final Four this year.
Ryan Andrade of RotoWire. Ryan, you've got U.S. Open prep to do. I know. So I haven't even dived into it yet, but we'll talk to you again soon. Always love having you on, man. To talk to you again.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
Ryan Andrade of RotoWire.com. And yeah, it's we talked about it a little earlier in the show. And Craig, I do want to get your thoughts on the first